Okay, what am I doing this week? Oh yes. So last week I streamed about AI news and updates, and one of the updates that I checked out towards the end of the stream was WP Bench. And so today I want to take a little bit of a deeper dive into WP Bench, understand how it works, what it does, how I can use it, how I can contribute to it. I want to see if I can add a data set, because the data sets are apparently limited a little bit at the moment or something. So we'll talk about data sets. I also want to figure out, so there were a couple of things that I wanted to figure out last week. One of them was, can I run local models? And the reason I have my workstation running is because I can SSH into my workstation, and I have the same models installed on that workstation as I do on my Mac. And so I just want to see out of interest sake if it is theoretically faster, because I do know that my workstation, based on some benchmarks, my workstation is a little bit faster than my Mac. So I just want to compare. I kind of want to run them side by side and just see which one wraps up quicker. Okay, so let's just go through the process. So essentially the process is clone the repository. You need to use Python. This works pretty well on both my MacBook and my Ubuntu machine, because Python is installed. Inside of the directory, you run this to set up the Python environment. So you run that to set up the environment, and then you use pip to install. So it looks like that probably installs it and then sets it up as a binary that you can run, which, yeah, that is what it does. Okay, cool. Let's just see here. Dependencies, getting requirements, installing backend dependencies. So it installs any packages you need, and then installs the WP Bench. It basically installs it in here, and then all the other things that I need are there as well. And that's all. I haven't played with Python a lot, so I'm learning how this works. And then you need to configure API keys. That's if you want to run like public models, like OpenAI models, Anthropic models, Google models. I've already done that. There's my env file. I'm not going to open it because then I'll leak my API keys, but I have already created those. I've just done OpenAI and Anthropic today. And then once you've done that, then you need to start the WordPress runtime. So this is basically using Docker and WP env to set up a virtual WordPress environment. It'll open up Docker, run Docker, and then set up the things. So I don't use Docker Desktop. I use something called OrbStack, just because it's leaner and quicker. So let's open up OrbStack. Make sure that's running. Okay, so there it is. There. And then what I need to do is I change to the runtime directory. So cd runtime, npm install, npm start. So npm install. And then npm start will essentially start the local WP environment in Docker. Okay, then you need to switch back to the root, because now we're going to run WP Bench. Okay, so you've done all of that. Then you need to create a config file. So there's an example config file. You can use two different types of data sets, either a local data set or a data set from Hugging Face. This is all brand new to me, so I don't know half of what I'm doing here, but the way I understand these data sets, if we have a look at what's in the README, okay, so to add a new suite, you need to create the new suite, add a category file, hooks, REST API, blah, blah. Execution test, so unique ID, task description, list of requirements the solution must meet, regex patterns to check and generate a code, assertions to run, an example correct solution. So if we have a look at the data sets, for example, so there's execution and knowledge. Let's have a look at execution first. Let's take something simple like hooks. So code generation, actions and filters. So your tests, hooks, intermediate, create code that adds a custom column called featured to the post admin list table. The column should display yes if the post has a meta key is featured with a value of 1, otherwise no. Expected behavior, admin post list shows a featured column of yes, no values based on post meta. Requirements, add column header using manage post column filter. Populate column content using manage post column. Check post meta is featured for value 1. And then there's required patterns. Okay, add filter, manage post columns. Interesting. So I wonder how it knows what to do with these things. I guess there's some way you can figure that out. I'm going to need to dive into that, which I will do after this live stream so that I can understand it better. Anyway, so let's run what we have. So what I'm going to do is I've got GPT, Gemini. Let's take Gemini out. And I got Claude Sonnet and Claude Opus. Oh, that's the example. I don't want the example. Yeah. Okay, that looks good. Okay, so I'm going to interrupt the benchmark. And then I want to go head to head. So on the left, we have, okay. You're going to see some of on the right because my head's in the way, but that's fine. So let me move the, let's do that. Let's move this up out the way. On the left screen, we have my local MacBook. On the right screen, we have my workstation. We're going to run the same command on both sides. Now, I'm not going to be able to hit them at exactly the same time because they're in two different windows, but I'm going to try and do it as quickly one after the other as I possibly can. So we'll let the MacBook start. There we go. Okay, let's see which one finishes first, just for fun. It looks like the machine makes a difference because I'm using the same models and the same configuration. But on the MacBook, it looks like some of the values are slightly different. Some of them are exactly the same, which is interesting. But the overall scores, as you can see, are slightly different. But what this does tell you is overall, Claude Sonnet at the moment is better for WordPress development, and I think this one also concurs with that. Currently, Claude Sonnet is better for WordPress development than any other model out of the 4 that I benched. So that's interesting. It would be better to be able to benchmark all 3, benchmark Claude Gemini as well. I don't have Gemini installed today, so it'd be interesting to see how that works. What I also want to do is I want to benchmark some local models. So according to the README, which is here, where it says this could make it easy to evaluate local models. So one of the early sort of local model providers that I came across was something called Olama. It's, according to them, it's the easiest way to automate your work using open models while keeping your data safe. You basically install it on your local machine. If you're on a Mac, there is a Mac download. If you're on Linux, there's a shell command to run. If you're on Windows, there's a download. So what I like to do is, for example, I like to look at all the coder models because I'm writing code. So Qwen Coder is one, Deepseek Coder is one. And essentially all you have to do is run this command. It'll download the model and then run it. So currently I have alarm list. I have Qwen Coder and Deepseek Coder installed. You will see that I also have Qwen Coder 30B. So basically what I understand is if you install the latest one will be whatever the latest one is. So in this case, it's 30B. So I have latest and 30B. So that's fine. So I'm going to test. I'm going to add these to the test. Now I also have this installed on my workstation. Okay, cool. So now let's compare those and see which one is faster. So this time I'm going to let that one go there and there. That's like one. This is definitely quicker at reading the configuration and starting WordPress. But this seems to do it quicker. It's almost like the response time is slower or something. But now it's neck and neck, but the workstation is still just a touch faster. Don't know if you can hear my fan over the live stream, but my workstation fans are spinning like crazy right now. all this benchmarking going on. It would appear that the benchmarking is frozen. Either that or it's got stuck. Okay, so it looks like the Deepseek Coder situation is not great. Wonder if it's because I think that's a bigger model. Put my camera back on. Yeah, my camera's not jumping around anymore, so that's a good thing. Deepseek Coder. That's the smaller of the two. That's interesting. That one seemed to just bum out completely. Okay, so what we're going to do now to make my life easier is I'm going to close this and we'll just run this on the workstation. And hopefully we can run these against each other on the workstation. So I think the best is going to be if I run this on the workstation and then the best. So let's do this. Let's just run it against Qwen for now. And we'll see what that gives us. Compare it to the other four. And then we'll come back for Deepseek in a second. Ooh, you know what we could do? We could just run a single model for now. So the one that was the best was Claude Sonnet, if I remember. So let's use Claude Sonnet as a single model. We'll just run that. And that'll at least give us a baseline that we can work with. What I'm thinking of doing is I'm going to run this one just as a baseline and then run the two local ones independently and just get a feel for what their results are. Okay, so there's our overall. Now, I'm not sure why it's not showing it here in this like cool thing like it did on the Mac, but it'll give us an idea of what's what. So if you have a look at the JSON, I'm pretty sure this is a case of multiplying this value by 100. So knowledge is 80.9, correctness is 47.9, overall is 43.4, which kind of lines up with what we saw earlier. So now let us run Qwen Coder. Okay. Let's just run the bench again. Always takes about 3.5 seconds to get the local site set up. It's pretty quick. Once it's all running, once everything's downloaded, it runs pretty quickly. Anyway, okay, so that's the next one. Let's have a look, see what Qwen Coder gives us. So that's 73, 33 overall through 35. That's not too bad compared to the paid model. That's not bad at all, if you consider you're getting it for free. That's not bad. Okay, let's do the next one. Let's go Deepseek, so we just need this part. Deepseek Coder. That's it, this one finishes. Last time we did. Okay, so now let's run that. Now this is the one that froze last time. Let's see if it finishes when it's on its own. Yeah, that's already better. Is it going to get stuck? It's like it gets stuck at 25% and then it doesn't go any further. Now I wonder if that's because of a hardware limitation or something else. So the other thing I want to do is I want to try and do this Hugging Face dataset, see what that does. There we go. Okay, theoretically that should work. Let's see what that does. Didn't like that. Okay, so it looks like the format is probably wrong. So it's probably the format of the JSON probably needs to be set in a certain way. But at least now I know how that works. So I come away with a few questions. Question number one is, what would cause a local model to get stuck? And then the other question I have is, how do I create a new dataset? So I'm looking at the datasets. And if we looked at hooks, for example, it makes sense to me what it's doing, but how do I verify what it should be doing? Do I have to write tests, or how does that work? If we look at knowledge, for example, it asks questions. So I'm sticking to an hour lately. But also I've run out of things that I want to do in the stream, so I want to move on to something else. So that's it for me, folks. Have a great rest of your week. Have a good weekend, and I'll see you next week. Bye.